Até a produção, pô. Olha lá. O negócio tem produção de série, de documentário. Olha isso, mano.
All the time.
Quantos inscritos nesse canal? 200 e pouco mil. 204 mil. Esse vídeo tem 5 anos, tem 3 milhões de views, caralho. É foda que se você botasse um vídeo desse no YouTube Brasil, o público já tinha saído daqui, ó. Falando, demorou muito pra começar o vídeo.
Opa.
Fala, Marcos Subaru. Valeu, mano, pelos 11 meses. Tamo junto, cara. Obrigadão pelo seu apoio.
Sorrow is no stranger to Zelda stories. Casting shadows over all the exploration, puzzle solving, monster battles, and rescue missions loom big clouds of sadness that, over the course of the series, has been the Zelda ingredient the writers have been slowly directing our attention to the most. Sorrow is being written like a disease, a virus infecting the happiness of each story world, and Link, the hero of these stories, assumes the role of the healer, burdened with flushing out the virus and restoring health.
Sofrimento, em geral, é a base de toda história, né? Vamos lá. História sobre movimento. E movimento causador. Isso é uma base que vocês podem levar pra vida. Todo movimento causador. Até na vida real. Então, não só grandes movimentos, mas pequenos movimentos. Movimento causador. Histórias são sobre mudanças, histórias são sobre dor. Não existe história onde nada acontece feijoada, onde as pessoas não passam por dificuldades ou sofrem por algum motivo. Então, toda história é sobre movimento e sobre dor. Então, o que ele está falando aqui está certo. Mas isso se aplica metaforicamente ou analiticamente, profundamente, narrativamente, a toda história que você encontrar por aí.
The emotional balances to each one. More often than not, it's the supporting characters that carry this sorrow disease, and their dialogue is constantly connecting these two themes of healing and sadness together, asking Link to heal their sorrows and ease their regrets. Titles like Majora's Mask and Twilight Princess go so far as to position these themes of sadness and regret into the opening dialogue, while Wind Waker and Breath of the Wild throw Link into broken worlds already operating in the aftermath of destruction, easing the regrets of the characters as they awaken to fulfill their destiny. Oracle of Ages and Seasons use flames of sorrow and despair as the villain's dominant threat upon the world, but what's important is that all of the sorrowful dialogue is unavoidable, necessary rites of passage for story progression, and all Zelda stories carry that Zelda sorrow language like this. Except one. Ocarina of Time is often overlooked when it comes to discussing which Zelda story is the saddest, and this might be because Ocarina director Shigeru Miyamoto and script director Toru Osawa don't use that Zelda sorrow language like its successors. Those recurring themes of sorrow, regret, sadness, and even healing appear nowhere in any corner of the script. Instead, Osawa sprinkles throughout the character dialogue this kind of off-center, cryptic, poetic language. Themes like the clear water surface reflecting growth, melodies drawing you into infinite darkness, memories of younger days, the flow of time being always cruel, being consumed by greed, and childish minds turning to noble ambition. In the past, these themes have been discussed as standalone sentences, called upon in singular form to assist theories or arguments generated among the Zelda community. But tracking this language back through Ocarina's entire script begins to reveal a few continuous thematic threads that, when isolated, actually form the skeletons of not only one, but two narratively complete stories of sorrow.
Do passado e do
With
presente,
the
né?
bones of these
Quer
two
dizer,
threads now in mind,
do passado e do futuro, né? Então, assim, eu sempre achei a história de Ocarina of Time bem... Não, não é triste, mas ela é... meio, não sombria também, mas ela é mais pra baixo, né? Depois que você faz a grande parada de tirar a espada da pedra e tal, e viajar no tempo, e o futuro é uma merda. Isso é bem clássico, né? E aí a cidade inteira, todo mundo virou zumbi, as pessoas que você conhecia, enfim, tá tudo horrível, né? E aí o clima do jogo fica muito mais sinistro.
Small details that add to the muscle of these two stories begin to pop out. Miyamoto and Osawa have used everything in the Ocarina toolbox: dialogue, locations, characters, nature, events, architecture, mechanics, and sound design to hide away subtle clues that all point back to these two sorrow threads. Instead of casting obvious clouds of sadness above the adventure through such direct, sorrowful dialogue, the creative team have buried sadness down in the subtext of the story. And as we begin to uncover all of the hidden details, it becomes clear that Ocarina of Time is, without a doubt, the saddest Zelda story no one noticed.
Gente, o que vocês estão falando aí no chat? Eu não assisti o vídeo de Bleach, não assisti o clipe de Bleach na live, eu já assisti sozinho ontem de madrugada, mas eu posso assistir de novo, não tem problema. Comecei a live agora, a gente tá vendo esse vídeo aqui, foca no vídeo.
In order to make sense of Miyamoto and Osawa's two sorrow threads, we first need to take a look at the beats that construct Ocarina of Time's main adventure. And the story opens on the Great Deku Tree sending Navi the Fairy to summon Link for a meeting. Sword and shield in hand, Link is warned by the Deku Tree of an evil
O nome do vídeo é Ocarina of Time, uma aula de subtexto.
spreading across the land of Hyrule, and is sent together the three spiritual stones before Ganondorf does. One inside the tree, one in a cave, and one in the belly of a giant fish. Using the three stones and the Ocarina of Time given to him by Princess Zelda, Link accidentally leads Ganondorf into the Sacred Realm and subsequently to the Triforce, granting him one evil wish: govern Hyrule. Link sleeps for 7 years and wakes as an adult to discover the once healthy Hyrule is now Dark Hyrule.
Eu tinha muito medo dessa parte. Quando eu era criança, não medo, mas o grito me dava um susto do caralho. Vai tomar no cu, zumbi do caralho.
On a new quest to destroy the curses now skulking inside Hyrule's 5 temples. Through tackling this evil, all 5 sages are awakened. Link's once childhood friends now transcended to the position of guardian over each realm of Hyrule: forest, mountain, lake, underworld, and desert. With their help, Link takes down Ganondorf and saves Zelda, and after succeeding, is sent back in time before Ganondorf hatches his plan. This top adventure line is the face of Ocarina and is essentially the blurb on the back of the box, complete with deadly dungeons, weapons of great power, and time travel. So where do these two sorrow threads come into play? Well, they actually begin where the entire Ocarina narrative begins, in that harrowing scene I showed in the prologue, the death of the Great Deku Tree. This scene with the Deku Tree's death is by far the most dense in its layered symbolism, and that its meaning translates differently depending on which one of Osawa's 3 threads is being followed. On the adventure line, his death is used as the vehicle to establish Link's motivation. A curse spreads across...
Esse vídeo aqui é cinema, né? Porra, absurdo o nível de trabalho que isso aqui tem. Muito foda.
Hyrule, and Link witnesses the effects firsthand in the Deku Tree's death. Off Link goes. But the first sorrow thread, though, specifically requires attention paid not to why the Deku Tree died, but how. Emphasis is placed heavily on the importance of life and natural balance across Ocarina of Time. Before his death, the Deku Tree recounts to Link Hyrule's creation story in detail. 3 goddesses, each with their own divine spirit of power, wisdom, and courage, cultivate the land, the law, and life to uphold that law in Hyrule. With this creation story embedded in the DNA of Ocarina's larger narrative, the land of Hyrule is inaugurated, not just as a blank world serving Link's exploration, but as a living, breathing organism, almost sentient with different moods, weather conditions, and sleeping patterns. Following the creation story, the Deku Tree goes on to speak of a wicked man of the desert who was the one to cast the death curse on the tree, and it's here, in the tension of Hyrule's natural balance and the death curse, that Osawa's first thread begins to take shape. While the characters in other Zelda stories are the direct victims of the series' sorrow disease, in Ocarina it is Hyrule's nature that has been afflicted by Ganondorf's curse. Link is
Isso aí, né? Lembra que a gente falou num vídeo que a gente assistiu ontem sobre Senhor dos Anéis, que o cara tava falando sobre como que os personagens afetam, né, a Terra, como que a Terra reflete os personagens, a narrativa e tal. Aí, ó. Acontece em várias obras. A gente tava comentando sobre isso, né? Como que não é o único de Senhor dos Anéis, mas em Senhor dos Anéis é muito bem feito, obviamente. Mas como isso é algo que você pode encontrar em várias histórias clássicas, né? E Ocarina of Time segue bem um padrão de uma história clássica.
restoring a natural order tipped off balance, and this quest for purification echoes the ethics found in the Japanese homegrown religion of Xintoism.
I live right by the Fushimi Inari Shrine. I've had a relation with this shrine since I was a child. Because of that, I felt that I was always protected, as if it's my guardian angel.
That's Miyamoto at the Fushimi Inari Shrine in southern Kyoto in Japan, Miyamoto and Osawa's childhood hometown. While the direct influence of this Shinto shrine can be found in Miyamoto's Star Fox series, the broader spirit of the Shinto faith is embedded on a larger scale across his entire gamography. None more so than the Zelda series, which are always stories reverberating off the needs and rhythm of nature. Yet, no Zelda story is quite as distilled in its use of Shintoist ethics than Ocarina of Time.
E aí, Yuri? Valeu, mano. Tamo junto. Obrigado aí pelo seu apoio. Pela primeira vez, dando aquela força pro canal. Obrigadão pela sua inscrição, tá? Tamo junto.
And this is the first sorrow thread, the Shinto line.
Então ele não tá falando das leis de sofrimento necessariamente de dentro da história, do passado, do futuro. Tá falando sobre os temas, né, que vão se entrelaçando sobre isso.
A great love and respect for nature is the defining foundation of the Shinto religion.
No Xintoismo, você tem pedras, né, santificadas, árvores santificadas, né? Santificado não é exatamente a palavra, mas vai servir. Tanto é que tem uma pedra lá que guarda a raposa de 9 caudas. A pedra lá no Japão, uma pedra gigante que tem a plaquinha lá, que essa é a pedra que guarda a raposa de 9 caudas selada dentro dela. Tipo, em 2020, uma parada assim, ela quebrou. E começou a acontecer um monte de coisa. Coincidência? Eu acho que não!
The minutia of a moral
O que a
compass.
gente acha aqui? Cadê? Cadê? Quebrou aqui, mano. Quebrou, mano. Quebrou a pedra, cara. Fudeu. Era essa aqui, ó. Tá vendo? Aqui. Vamos lá, vamos ver. Era essa aqui, pô. Tinha até o selinho dos papéis, né? Aqui, ó. Selado com a corda dos papéis. Aqui tem de acordo com a lenda, o espírito da Kyuubi tá preso dentro dela. Ah, não, é 2022 que ela quebrou. 2022, foi em 2020 não. Ela quebrou, mano. Aí, cadê? A famosa pedra foi encontrada, quebrada ao meio, depois de 1000 anos. A raposa está de volta no mundo. É isso. Doideira. Como será que ela quebrou do nada, assim? Porque ela quebrou, assim, ela quebrou a ponto de arrancar a corda, né? Arrancar a corda que tava ali, porque senão... Ou ela só escorregou, né? Ela tipo, quebrou aqui, escorregou pra baixo e a corda caiu. Mas só quebrou, né? Depois de 1000 anos a pedra falou, cansei. Tchau. Falou!
Is replaced with harvesting a desire to remain in touch with Kami, the spiritual energy of a particular place or a member of nature. The name Kami can be translated to gods or nature spirits. while the name Shinto literally translates to the way of the gods. The fox Miyamoto addresses at the Fushimi Inari Shrine is considered a messenger of the Inari god, Inari being the name of the mountain the shrine sits at the base of, believed to host the god of rice, fertility, and industry. Purification is a key aspect of all.
É meio que dos temas do arco de Aula no Exorcist, Blue Exorcist. É o arco dos Illuminati, tem a ver com os Inari.
Ritual activity in Shinto, and it exists to re-establish order and balance between nature, humans, and deities. Purification rituals counteract the threat of pollution, which is considered an obstruction to the flow of life and blessing from the kami. The anthropomorphization or physical representation of kami spirits in fiction isn't uncommon, and the best visual example might be from Studio Ghibli's Princess Mononoke, a film that borrows heavily from Shintoist artifacts. The biggest examples being the lives of the boars, wolves, the kodama, who represent the spirits of individual trees, and the forest spirit, a symbol of harmony, who embodies the larger kami of the entire forest. In Mononoke, San and Ashitaka are seen as the saviors in a world that has forgot about kami, rhythm, nature, and consequently, ultimate importance. Miyamoto and Osawa's work in Ocarina of Time.
O mangá eu acho muito bom. No anime eu não sei, mas o anime de Black Exorcist é muito altos e baixos, né? É foda.
Also borrow from the same Shintoist framework. Different villages with their own unique races occupy different areas of Hyrule, and each race is bound elementally to their own section of nature. Gorons to mountain and fire, Zoras to water, and Kokiri to forest. These rural, kami-like races dedicate their worship towards the greater nature spirits, the great Deku tree, in which, similarly to the forest spirit in Mononoke, embodies the kami of Kokiri Forest, and Lord Jabu Jabu, the patron deity of the Zora race, thought to embody the divine spirit and protector of the Zora ancestral lands, always sitting in some sort of altar. Jabu only grants entry when presented with a fish offering, and this concept of offering food like rice and fish is taken directly from Shintoist practices. The beta version of this scene shows a pedestal with an ocarina engraved on top, suggesting that music was originally required to open Jabu Jabu's mouth, and this references a Shintoist ritual practice called kaguda, aka god entertainment, which is used during festivals to appease kami spirits. In fact, music in Ocarina is the direct replacement for these Shintoist rituals. Saria explains that music can be used to speak to the spirits of the forest, and moments exist when music and dance are used to bring happiness to those elementally bound occupants across Hyrule. In Ocarina, music calls down rain, it splits waterfalls, summons the sun and moon, and calls a horse to Link's side. Music here plays the role of
Imagina o cara tocar Ocarina e ficar de dia e de noite quando o cara quer, mano. Isso é um caos do caramba.
connecting Link directly with the rhythm of Hyrule's nature.
Boa noite, Narras.
E aí, Capim?
Gostei dos últimos vídeos teus, ainda não vi Boy Garça.
Assiste,
Nada de
bom.
amor, mas muito esporte. Basquete, vôlei, handi, tênis, xadrez e tudo pra competir entre universitários.
Caramba, o cara tá bravo.
É isso, se cuida bem aí.
Valeu, mano, tamo junto, olha, pelos 21 meses. Continue aí na sua jornada. Porra, tá fazendo muita coisa. Vai, mano, mete brasa aí.
Urasawa and Miyamoto also achieve this connection through their subtle design elements. The 3 dungeons Link must explore first during his childhood phase are all environments crafted directly from the greater nature deities. Inside the Deku Tree, inside Jabu Jabu's belly, and inside Dodongo's cavern, which upon closer inspection is actually built from the remains of an old dinosaur with skulls and rib cages and things like that. Link then purifies each dungeon, ridding them of the infestations placed there by Ganondorf, and is rewarded with one of the 3 spiritual stones, symbols of that section of nature he's purified: forest, mountain, water. These elemental stones are then used to open the door of time, and the sacred act of opening the sanctuary door during Shinto ceremonies is also recreated here. Music once again used to replace the concept of ritual to open the door to the sacred realm and access to the gods.
A música e a religião, misticismo estão muito conectados, né? Porque, inclusive, o povo fala, né, que a música é a prova que Deus existe, né? Porque é algo absurdamente complexo e bonito, nascido do puro caos, né? Não só do caos que deu origem a gente, mas do caos de que por que existe música, né? Por que a variação dos intervalos entre uma vibração do ar pode criar coisas tão de outro planeta, né? Tão bonitas e tão etéreas, capazes de transmitir sentimentos, sensações e várias outras coisas do tipo. Então você vai ver na Bíblia a questão de música, né? Os anjos que cantam a glória de Deus. Vai pegar em religiões africanas, tem muita música e dança. Nas asiáticas também. Você vai encontrar que isso é uma parada bem intrínseca do ser humano, né? Sempre muito conectado com religião também. E Senhor dos Anéis, obviamente, música também é a origem de tudo. E nas Crônicas de Nárnia também. Quando o Aslan cria o mundo, né? Ele dá o rugido dele e tal, e tem uma canção que acompanha isso, se eu não me engano. Então, apenas música, muito foda. Pois é, né? Ordem vinda do caos, muito louco.
Link's childhood phase is dedicated predominantly to connecting him with the idea of what a healthy Hyrule looks like, and Osawa and Miyamoto place such a strong emphasis on this to allow for the tragedy of what happens next hit harder.
É todo japonês.
Shintoism largely died in the post-World War II era.
Todo japonês e o seu trauma justificado, né, da Segunda Guerra Mundial, mas também é sua culpa que às vezes é só ignorada, né? É só ignorada. Ninguém pergunta o que os japoneses estavam fazendo antes de tomar 2 bombas atômicas na cabeça, né, porra? Ninguém pergunta o que eles estavam fazendo na Coreia, na China, em outro lugar. Mas assim, obviamente, né, existe a diferença entre um soldado e um civil, né? E é algo traumatizante mesmo para a população inteira, todo esse período da Segunda Guerra Mundial, pós-Segunda Guerra Mundial. Então, com certeza vai se manifestar nas mais diversas obras deles, né?
Era. In the aftermath of the war, most Japanese came to believe that their hubris of empire had led to their downfall. Lust for territory blinded their leaders to the importance of their homeland. We see this theme of territorial conquest playing out through both villains in Ocarina and Mononoke, Ganondorf and Lady Eboshi, whose objectives on the domination of the world rather than seeking to establish harmony. Eboshi plans to kill the Forest Spirit in order to stop the spread of nature, making it easier for her own town to conquer and prosper in the iron-rich grounds of the area. Ganondorf, in his quest of greed to gain complete mastery of the world, places curses upon all of Hyrule's nature deities, and with Kami now disregarded, nature retaliates. Kami spirits are of 2 minds. They can nurture and love when respected, or they can bring destruction and disharmony when disregarded. And so while manifesting into only smaller monsters during Link's childhood phase with parasitic spiders in the Deku Tree, dinosaur infestations in the cave, and electric leech-like anemones in Jabu Jabu's belly, when Link wakes after that 7 years, the effects of the curse now affect Dark Hyrule at large. Lake Hylia has been drained, Death Mountain suffers from endless eruption, monsters cover the floor of Kokiri Forest, dark spirits are set loose in Kakariko Village and Ganondorf's minions gather in the desert. Shintoism also believes that upon death, souls with unsettled disputes in life become ghosts. And so the appearance of big Poghosts across Hyrule, spirits of concentrated hatred, are now an occurrence. Instead of dungeons crafted by Hyrule's nature, the dungeons Link must purify as an adult now have man-made qualities to their architecture, echoing the sentiment that the world Link now occupies.
Isso eu nunca percebi. Que as dungeons dele criança eram naturais e as dungeons dele adulto eram feitas por pessoas. Interessante, eu nunca tinha percebido isso, legal.
Is built on the strength of man instead of a natural balance. And so the Shinto line is really a story about the battle over the nature of Hyrule and Link is the cure, purifying the world with his music and weapons of great power. After destroying the manifestations of the curse in each temple, Hyrule physically begins a process of healing, and the new awakened sages reward Link with elemental medallions: light, forest, fire, water, shadow, and spirit. With the forest now purified, a Deku Sprout shoots up to one day grow and become the new Deku Tree. The volcano is calmed, the ice melts in Zora's domain, the lake refills with clear water, and the infinite darkness is destroyed in the underworld. An element of the Shinto creation myth is the existence of a land of the dead called Yomi, an evil realm where the dead reside. The spirits living in Yomi are malicious and lonely and try to drag people down from the land of the living. At the very end, Ganondorf's castle, the beacon of Hyrule's pollution, crumbles, and the Light Sage calls upon the gods to open the sealed door and send Ganondorf into the void of Evil Realm. Ganondorf is sent to Yomi.
Mandado pro Shadow Realm.
And so Miyamoto and Osawa's first sorrow thread is, in essence, a message about nature and the importance of striking a harmony with it. Greed and hatred are a pollution to this natural balance, and if you don't respect it, nature will surely retaliate. Who knows what might happen to those who are consumed by greed?
Osawa's third and final thread might be the most important and requires attention paid to these last pieces of poetic dialogue: growth, childish minds and memories of younger days, etc. These kinds of references to age and growth are nowhere to be found in other Zelda stories, but Link's age is the focus of about 90% of all the characters in Ocarina of Time. Before Link enters the sacred realm to sleep for that 7 years, the supporting characters make sure Link knows exactly how little the world expects of him, with just a little kid, fairy boy, forest boy, kid, sunny, kid, fairy boy, boy, lad, son, kid, boy, forest boy, fairy boy, son, little kid, and kid. Seeing Link for the child that he is a relatively fair assessment, and these references to his disposition would render unimportant if it weren't for the equally ferocious obsession the characters have with the idea of manhood. Becoming a man is an ideology the characters, including Link's childhood friends, seem to consider as the highest level of honor. There's talk of being a real man, not being a real man without a fairy, Dorina wanting Link to prove he is a real man,
É isso que eles estão falando em
Naruto
japonês.
telling Link he has been a terrible man to keep her waiting, and Naburu wishing she had kept a promise all those years ago after seeing how handsome Link had become as a man. The third thread for Link is an inward journey. It is Osawa's exploration of the transition from childhood to adulthood, and just like the real world, it is both awkward and tragic. It's the growing up line. If threads 1 and 2 are about why and how the Deku Tree died, then finding a foothold in the growing up line requires an examination into who the Deku Tree is. The children of Kokiri Forest describe the Deku Tree as not only the guardian of the entire forest, but also their father, claiming that he was the one to give life to the Kokiri race, as well as everything in the forest. The name Kokiri, when translated from Japanese kanji to English, echoes this sentiment, with ko meaning kid or child and ki meaning tree. So here we have children of the tree, which not only aligns with themes explored on the Shinto line, but gives the entire forest a childlike attitude. The layout of the forest is a playground with ladders, ramps, tree houses, secret crawling holes, and mazes. Similar to Neverland from the Peter Pan stories, Kokiri Forest exists as this insular, magical realm separate from the real world. Children never grow up here, and each child is allied with a fairy companion, the mark of a true Kokiri. And the story begins with the Deku Tree sending Link his very first fairy companion, Navi.
O Link nasceu do mato também, né? Ele fez uma semente. Nasceu. Não existe pai e mãe pros coqueiros. Você nasce da árvore.
And so Kokiri Forest is the physical representation of Link's childhood, and this is the foothold for the growing up line. Though as carefree as it appears, Kokiri Forest isn't without sadness. Humans name Kokiri Forest the Forbidden Forest, and some children explain that those who enter from the outside without a fairy transform into Selphos, those skeleton monsters Link faces in future temples. We see this happen later when a man enters the forest and falls asleep against this stump, only to vanish later, leaving a Kokiri girl to explain that he's now lost to the woods. Everybody Stelphos. But children cannot leave either. The great Deku Tree said that if a Kokiri leaves the woods, he or she will die. And so with no one entering as an outsider and no one leaving as a child of the tree, we have this protective bubble around what stands to be childhood, and some of the Deku Tree's dialogue aligns with this idea, stating that as the source of life, Kokiri Forest stands as a barrier, deterring outsiders and maintaining order of the world. There is a purity and innocence being protected here. But this protective bubble begins to collapse when the father is killed. In the wake of the Deku Tree's death, Link is forced to exit Kokiri Forest. The Deku Sprout reveals later that Link is actually an outsider, brought by his mother to the Deku Tree years ago, seeking protection during the Great War. So Link is an outsider with a Kokiri fairy, and with this dual citizenship, can travel to and fro between childhood and the adult world, yet not belonging to either one. Even on the outside, Link still sees the world through the eyes of a child, and Miyamoto and Osawa keep the design playful during this entire childhood phase. The castle market is full of life with dancing couples, dogs, and playing children. The dungeons are full of magic and mystery. Link is peeking through windows, climbing...
Tava falando, né? Imagina você, né? Você tá jogando Zelda. Tá lá jogando Zelda. E aí? Você é criança, você não tem acesso a revistas, você não tem acesso à internet, você não tem acesso a guia, você não tem acesso a nada. Conseguir a espada já é bem difícil. Talvez você precise da ajuda de um amigo ou do seu pai para ler o inglês, qualquer coisa. E aí tu pegou a espada, tu tá no hype. Aí você sai da catedral e a cidade tá assim. E o bicho do nada dá um jump scare em você. Porra, isso aí é a fórmula pra você fazer a criança ficar em choque com o jogo e marcar ela pra sempre, sabe?
Now cold and feel the hood and responsibility comes at Link with everything it has. The first reveal, the old marketplace, once bustling with color, now cold and desolate, and it's in this moment that Osawa establishes Link and Ganondorf, who on the adventure line represent the opposing forces of good and evil, and nature versus man on the Shinto line, into their designed role of childhood versus adulthood. Ganondorf represents everything Link isn't, and Osawa uses this storytelling device to attack the only thing Link is holding onto: his relationships. As Link gains back ground from Ganondorf in his purification quest on the Shinto line, on the growing up line, a slow subtraction begins to take place. The more Hyrule gains, the more Link loses. A clip of Miyamoto and Zelda producer Eiji Onuma mentioned in an interview the importance of Link leaving the 4 girls from his childhood behind. Link must lose everything to save the world. This plays
uma parada bem clássica também, né? Pra você salvar o mundo, você tem que perder tudo, né? Porque você não pode ter nenhum tipo de apego ou fraqueza ou pensamentos que não sejam só... Obrigado. Que não sejam só focados em salvar o mundo, né? Vai pegar isso em várias histórias religiosas também, né? Por exemplo, Jesus também perde tudo, né? Ele é rejeitado, liberta um ladrão no lugar dele, ele é crucificado, a pior punição que tinha na época, e por aí vai, né? Todo mundo, enfim. Não só ele, mas várias outras histórias mitológicas, religiosas, de ficcionais, grandes clássicos, vai ter isso também, do cara, para conseguir salvar o mundo, ele vai ter que deixar tudo para trás. E não se importar mais com nada dele, né? Ego, posse, uma vida normal. Ele precisa abandonar tudo para transcender.
Boa noite, faz um react do rap do Ayano Koji.
Valeu, Danger. Vamos assistir sim, cara. Valeu pela sua doação. Então é um tema bem interessante que acontece nessas histórias. Tem riscos muito altos, né?
Is heavily on the everything has to come from somewhere.
Também é assim, isso que eu tô falando é do ponto de vista mais abstrato, né, simbólico. Mas do ponto de vista narrativo, você vai ter várias outras funções para esse tipo de coisa, né? Drama, ciclo de tentativa e falha, técnica de empatia, progressão da história, risco, consequências, mudanças. Você vai ver que a história de fato tá mudando, tá em movimento. Tem várias outras paradas, né? Mas isso são funções técnicas. E o que marca mesmo a pessoa não vai ser a função técnica. Vai ser o simbolismo, a poesia da coisa, a tragédia e por aí vai.
Natural balance of Xintoism. You don't just get wood. You have to chop down a tree. You can wash away corruption, but it has to go somewhere. In this case, the corruption is lifted off the nature of Hyrule and onto Link himself. This is his designed role in nature. But we're not done yet. While each sage's relevance stems from their race and elemental essence on the Shinto line, on the growing up line, Osawa has infused these characters with characteristics and dialogue symbolic of milestones one must navigate during adolescence: friendship, family, romance, loyalty, and sex. Saria's dialogue dedicated predominantly to friendship, Darunia to sworn brotherhood and family after Link saves the starving Goron race. Ruto's character, obsessed with love and marriage, Princess Zelda's loyal bodyguard, Impa, solely focused on Zelda's safety, asks Link to protect Zelda in her stead, and Naburu, whose dialogue suggests sexual activity and comments on how handsome Link has become as a man. And so those medallions Link collects from each sage are also emblems of Link's adult achievements, and Link's childhood guide, the Owl, closes this chapter off, congratulating Link on fully maturing as an adult. Childish minds turn to noble ambition. But at this point, Link has lost everything and everyone, except now as officially a man, and with his childhood essence still attached to his back, can now enter Ganondorf's castle to kick off the final chapter and the final fight: childhood versus adulthood.
Muito doido. O Ganondorf tá lá no piano, mano. Tá sozinho no castelo no piano. Tá esperando, tá preparando o clima.
Ocarina of Time's code disables the ability to defeat Ganondorf with any weapon other than the Master Sword. The growing up line requires a poetic close to this final chapter, and so it must be the Master Sword, aka the essence of childhood, which delivers the final blow to adulthood. After defeating Ganondorf and ultimately avenging the Deku Tree and the forest, Zelda sends Link back in time to his childhood version. But the greatest tragedy is yet to come. With the Master Sword back in the pedestal, the essence of childhood now falls to Link's fairy companion, Navi, who remains Link's key back into Kokiri Forest, where he can live out the rest of his childhood. But with no explanation, Osawa writes Navi out of the story, and the very last shot is Navi leaving Link behind. Link's last connection to his childhood is severed, and if he was to return, would become a Stelphos like the man against the stump. He is forever banished from his childhood. This Stelphos character from Twilight Princess, aka the hero's shade who speaks of easing his regrets, is confirmed by the creators to be this Link from Ocarina of Time. And so, Miyamoto and Osawa's third thread of sorrow is one that comes full circle. The growing up line is a losing story, and though the purified world of Hyrule lives on, Link pays the ultimate price and falls victim to what he's really been fighting against from the beginning: the cruel flow of time. Time is the true villain of the story, and this kind of message about losing childhood mirrors Miyamoto's personal ethos when it comes to designing his games. I think that inside every adult is the heart of a child. We just gradually convince ourselves that we have to act more like adults.
Tem aquilo, né, que se você pegar a parada sobre inocência, né, que você pode usar isso como um sinônimo de infância também. A partir do momento que você perde a inocência, não tem como recuperar, né? Você vai pegar isso até onde a bingo da live, no épico de Gilgamesh, tem exatamente uma parte sobre isso do Enkidu, né? Perdendo a inocência dele com sexo e os animais da floresta não conversando mais com ele, não brincando mais com ele, porque ele não é mais puro. E ali o Link, ele se tornou adulto, né? Ele fez o que precisava ser feito, ele sacrificou o que precisava ser sacrificado, ele viveu a vida adulta ali. E não tem como voltar, né? Ele pode voltar no tempo, no corpo, mas a mente dele ainda é a dele, né? Ou a alma dele, se for uma parada mais abstrata. Então, por isso que a nave deixa ele, né? Ele não é mais uma criança. Ele pode estar no corpo de uma criança, mas ele não é mais uma criança. E precisa lidar com isso. Então acho que é um elemento que dá pra... Opa. Até bandeja. Não. Obrigado. Então eu acho que... Pera aí. Traz o azeite também, por favor. Só pegar uma pizza aqui, galera. Traz o azeite também. Com a pizza, mano. Tô no finalzinho do vídeo. Eu queria comer assistindo esse vídeo, não deu, né? Mas a gente tava falando, né, sobre questão de inocência, né? Então, o Link, a alma dele já é adulta, né? A nave deixou ele por causa disso, provavelmente. E aí a gente tem coisas parecidas em várias histórias, né? Sobre o preço, obrigado. O preço que a gente paga por fazer a coisa certa, né? Você faz o que tem que ser feito. Você sacrifica o que precisa ser sacrificado. Porque você é o único que pode fazer isso. Você é o responsável. Você é o herói. Você é o homem de verdade, né? E aí a necessidade dos outros vão vir antes das suas, né? E você vai ter que sacrificar isso. Vai sacrificar o que você gosta em prol do bem maior, né? E aí heroísmo é sobre sacrifício. E aí você vai ter um monte de história que brinca com isso, sobre arrependimento, sobre outras coisas, né? Crônicas de Nárnia é muito sobre amadurecimento também. E o C.S. Lewis, ele tem uma frase no final do livro, se eu não me engano, alguma coisa parecida com... muitas pessoas acham que envelhecer é trocar seus gostos, né? É trocar o iogurte pelo vinho. Mas ele fala que envelhecer não é trocar o gosto, é refinar o gosto. Você vai aprender a apreciar um bom vinho, mas também não esquecer do quão bom o iogurte pode ser. E é uma parada próxima a isso aí que provavelmente o Miyamoto está falando, né? Sobre o coração da criança no corpo do adulto.
Ultimately, Ocarina of Time is a story about transformation and the inevitable sorrow that comes attached to it. While other Zelda stories allow the audience to consider sorrow and despair through more direct means, Ocarina creates an indirect, sorrowful atmosphere by establishing, then removing, a world of happiness. On each line, Link loses something in the death of the Great Deku Tree: a mentor, a protector, and a father. And this gives way to 3 types of transformation. Transformation of Link as a person, transformation of the people around him, and transformation of the world he inhabits. But it's actually in Ganondorf that we find Miyamoto and Osawa's greatest storytelling weapon. Appropriately named King of Thieves, each line explores the 3 things Ganondorf has stolen: the Triforce, the health of Hyrule's nature, and what might be his greatest crime of all time, Link's childhood. While that Zelda sorrow language may not appear in Ocarina of Time's script, Link is still healing sorrows and easing regrets on scales far larger than its successors. In the end, Link is changed forever, a savior banished from his childhood, destined to roam alone in a world that doesn't remember.
Muitas pessoas reclamam que algumas histórias que envolvem viagem no tempo é uma solução muito fácil para remover o peso das coisas, né? Você joga fora o que aconteceu. É quase o equivalente a um sonho, né? Mas tem histórias que trabalham isso muito bem.
And all of this buried down in the subtext, beneath the heroic adventures of the main story. Ocarina of Time is the saddest Zelda story no one noticed.
Bom vídeo. Muito bom vídeo. E não precisou fazer nada revolucionário, né? Não precisou inventar moda, vamos dizer assim. A história é simples, eficiente. As pessoas tendem a julgar histórias simples como simplórias, né? Como ruins. Mas é muito pelo contrário, na verdade. Bom vídeo. Parabéns aí pro cara aí, pro Good Blood. Muito bom.